Hello, soulmates. You're now listening to Peppers of Stories meant to soothe the souls of women everywhere.
I found myself reflecting on a relationship that I've had with one just lovely person in my life. I have several of them. God has blessed me with wonderful support systems. People can bounce things off of each other and just be there in the tough times and in the good times. And that person I'm just going to tribute today, her name is Deborah Tyrell. I always call her, when we met, our maiden name, she's Deborah King. And I want to entitle this episode Serendipity and Sisterhood. Subtitled, My Sister Crossed the Water to Me. Here's some things that I wrote and journaled, and I'll just share probably some ad-libs as I go. But Deborah came to visit Nigeria mid-February, and was here for about 2 weeks, and was able to stay with us. We're from the same hometown, and when I visit the States, I visit the city where she lives, and we just have so many things in common. That's why I call it serendipity, where our paths have been crossing for about 50 years. And I'm just in love with this girl. She has been just such a rock in my life, and such a meaningful that really climaxed with this visit to Nigeria in February. All right, my sister crossed the water to me. So thankful Deborah came in the month of love and filled my cup to overflowing. I felt like so many open loops were closed. Having someone who knew me before Onaha, before even I wore a training bra, knows me, my vulnerability, my fall short, and loves me anyway. Someone who can tell me with love when my slip is hanging, as well as when I need to put one on. Laugh out loud, she had to do that recently. Let me go back. I grew up in a southern town where I was in first grade in the first year of schools integrating. This was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. If you've heard of Winston-Salem, it may be in the context of Maya Angelou. She was a professor at Wake Forest University in our wonderful town of Winston-Salem. Once upon a time, it was known for tobacco. Hence, R.J. Reynolds was my high school. Reynolds was the hospital I was born in. And Renola Roads and everything named Reynolds is all over the city. Tobacco time has come and gone, but some things that have stuck with me are some of the things that have stuck with me is the hardworking nature of Winston-Salem, and you see that in Deborah as well. No one's going to outwork Deborah. And just how we build community. Our church is so strong, and just a lot of wonderful things about Winston-Salem. But what I wrote here was, back then, that's when I fell in love with my idol, Barbara Jordan, in the 3rd grade, and I met Deborah King in the 5th grade. We were blessed to have another one of my role models, Dorothy A. Young, as our language arts, honors level language arts teacher. I credit her for the confidence and go-getter and nothing will hold me back spirit that Deborah and I seem to share. This teacher challenged us on so many levels. I remember Dorothy A. Young talking about it's pronunciation, not pronunciation, and integrity. When she talked, the chest just rose up and you just felt 2 feet taller, and she just elevated you on so many levels, and the standards and her expectations. And she was talking about Iliad and Odyssey, and we're in the 9 and 10 years old, and we're like, huh? But she would lift you there, take you there, expand you. I guess this was coaching before I knew what coaching was. But what I loved about Dorothy A. Young was her commanding of her space and owning of her space. I am challenged to find anyone who's more articulate than Dorothy A. Young. And for both Deborah and I to have her as a teacher, Deborah was on the 6th grade side of the room and I was on the 5th grade side of the room, but our paths did quickly get intertwined. This teacher who challenges on so many levels, just an example. If you would wake me at midnight, I can probably still list the 39 prepositions we were forced to memorize. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? I mean, she made sure we were wide and deep in all things language, English, communication, and she really, really holds a big space in my early foundations. Deborah was sixth grade, so I will use that as an excuse for how she beat me. I mean, she beat me squarely in a competition. So Miss Young had an opportunity. I don't know what the school program was, but we were going to get the opportunity to perform an oral interpretation of poetry, basically memorize a 5-page poem and deliver it. But what was significant about this poem was it was called The Creation by James Weldon Johnson, and God stepped out on earth, and it talked about from it's a historically Black poem, but it talks about 7 days of creation. And James Weldon Johnson is just a well-known Black author. What's so funny is I quizzed Deborah on this trip, and she still actually knows the poem 50 years later. Back then I learned no one will outwork Deborah King. Our lives have been intertwined in such a lovely way since then. It just makes my heart smile. I look at the color purple. You know, sister hand play and songs were a part of my relationship with my biological big sister, Pamela Jean Wirtz. My sister so encouraged me to dare living boldly. She spoke life into my own flavor of genius before I even knew its taste. Me and my brother's big sister Pam really was our biggest promoter, protector, and surrogate mom. That's for Lewis and I. And when we lost her, lost our biological mother in my early teens, my love for Pam knows no bounds. So when we found my sister's U.S. passport sitting beside her lifeless body in 2013, my heart broke a second time. We had dreamed of how she would see her little sister's world in Nigeria, finally seeing all I had been telling her about for the past 10 years. Life circumstances had delayed her, but in 2012, she got serious and did all the things to come across the border, applied for the passport, went out all the blah, 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 blah. And unfortunately, she never made it in body, but I feel her spirit is with me always, everywhere. So that just lays the foundation. My sister was never able to come to Nigeria. I'm thankful for her only and loving son, Kevin, who was able to come that year and spend Christmas almost surrogating for Pam, but planting his stake in our world he would grow closer to also. So my first relative to come to Nigeria that I didn't give birth to, laugh out loud, arrived after 10 years here, my nephew, Kevin. My loving, biggest heart in the world cousin, Tanya, has honored us at our daughter's traditional wedding in 2016. So she came to Nigeria as well, and it was just wonderful. We had a big celebration. She's a world traveler, so she had been here and there, and it was just beautiful to have her come and represent all of my side of the family because she was the only one. So it was beautiful to share that with her, but still my longing continued. So in 2023, my big brother came. Oh my gosh, my heart just overwhelmed. It was like talking about closing loops. My brother is he and I left, and our childhood memories and our support of each other. You know, we've unfortunately had to bury my sister, had to bury my father together. And he and I just love my brother. So anyway, Lewis and I actually celebrated at the John Coltrane. So it was a blues and jazz festival this summer for one of his milestone birthdays, and yeah, when he came, he felt like a king. Everywhere he went, they were calling him Chairman. And he was eating and tasting and partaking of everything. He still talks about the our cook here who fed him so well and so heartily. And he just, everything he saw and our friends, it warmed me and again enlarged me. And as my worlds begin to connect more, I am feeling more complete. So my brother has come, my nephew has come, and my cousin Tanya has come. But still a longing for a sister to come. I was finally satisfied in 2026. I fear if I start, I won't be able to stop. But yes, Deborah and I joined our sorority at the same time. She as line president and I as line secretary. So funny how we fell right into those roles during this visit. Funny how conditioning and teamwork show up. Our 56 days was a transformation we shared that has helped to shape our values and helped us in releasing the purpose God has seated in us. Beyond that, we have so much in common, but probably are so different. We're both Bachelor of Science industrial engineers, both holders of MBAs. She's got that very prestigious Wharton one. Both married Nigerians, different tribes, but they were friends before us. Both thespians, we perform. She was in North Carolina Repertory Company, and I co-founded the Black Repertory Theater at NC State. Both public service and volunteers at the core, and both love out loud. One of her favorites quotes that I love, she says, "Learn your people's love language and speak it fluently." That is so powerful for me as it displays how other-focused she is and unselfish. I witnessed how she paused her life to care for her mom in her last years, now using that experience to serve and mentor others. I told you Deborah was the bomb. She's just amazing. I recall how she surrogate mother for me as I sent one child after another to the U.S. After every graduation, birthday, baby shower, wedding, showers, bridal couple shower we did, sharing her Taiwo hotel and many U-Haul boxes over the years, trying to get them packed and sent back to Nigeria on our trips. The way she has come to the rescue on so many occasions and has been a place of succor and prayer with praise in those valley moments of my life. When she's one of those people I could ugly cry and she would hold space for me, then find a way to help me reframe using our shared faith and raised up in as or spirit, spirit of praise and worship. And what I mean by that, there have been times I'm taking some hard stuff to Deborah. She's found ways to pray me through it. I was going through something recently, and she wrote me a prayer of protection and sent it to me. So when you have sisters that do that kind of thing for you, she wrote a prayer of protection just for me when I was under attack. So when my sister came across the water to me in the form of Deborah King, now Taiwo, my heart was just overflowing. She packed her patience as you need to when you're visiting the motherland. She soaked up the best in all things. I feel quite complete in my worlds bridging together. Connecting in yet another serendipitous way through chance meetings, turning into special relationships. So in Nigeria, club membership is what we do for access to power and to peace. While at the famed Ikoyi Club 1938, where food is plenty after Sunday service, Deborah and I were just sitting there enjoying ourselves, either about the spades whipping we almost delivered to the young bloods the night before, Rennie and her friend, or her belief that I missed my choir on purpose that morning when we went to church. I looked up and spotted someone I saw probably the last time in 2015, except for a photo with her and Deborah. The serendipity was in a chance meeting 3 years ago in Philadelphia. Deborah actually met this woman at a funeral. They took a picture and sent it to me because Deborah obviously started a conversation. I said, "Where do you live?" And the woman answered, "I live in Nigeria." Deborah said, "Do you know my girlfriend, Patrenia?" She said, "Yes." And of the 200 million people in Nigeria, we knew each other, and she sent the picture. Well, I am in this club. I've come back to Nigeria after being away for most of the last 3.5 years. I see this woman at the bar, and I recognize, I know her from somewhere. And I was like, whoa, where I know her from? And I went up, and you know how God talks to you along the way. So, you know, you have to lean in sometimes even when you're uncertain, and God will like kind of just give you wings as you're jumping into the thing. I'm a firm believer in that. And if anybody needs to have that kind of belief, I'll share it with you today, because at the point that I got up, I did not know where I knew her from, but I was moving in conviction because I knew God was going to solve it before I walked up to her. And by the time I got there, I knew her name, and I connected the dots. And I began to say, "Hey, were you attending a funeral of a dear friend in Philadelphia about 3 years ago? Didn't you take a picture with that person and you all sent it to me?" And she began to share. Unfortunately, the person that passed away was very close to her. And so I could see that brought up some kind of pain. But then when I began to share with her, "Do you remember when I reached out to you after I got the photo? And you said, 'OMG, I can't believe I met someone that you've known since you were 9, and I meet them in the United States.'" And she said, I said, "What you're not going to believe is that she's sitting right over there." So it was one of those moments where I had not seen this lady since 2015. She ran into my girlfriend Deborah in Philadelphia 3 years ago. And Deborah, on her first visit to Nigeria, where we see each other, I think she came last year, but before that, it had been like a 20 years she hadn't been here. And she comes and happens to meet this lady. This is a serendipity that I see happening in my life. I've come to expect it. And when it comes to Deborah, we have so many examples. I'll share, I think, at least one more. So anyway, what I wrote was she was attending a funeral of a dear friend, a Wharton MBA fellow alum in Philadelphia 3 years ago. She sends me a photo of her with another woman and describes that by chance this lady says she lived in Nigeria, and confirmed, yes, that she knows me. Now, me and this woman are also Niger wives, just like Deborah and I are Niger wives. Niger wives meaning that we are something other than Nigerian, but married to Nigerian men. We all happen to be American, married to Nigerian. But anyway, she sends the photo, and I reach out to the friend, and the comment is, "How small is the world?" And so they meet in Philadelphia, and the cherry on top of the whole visit was her being able to meet again in Lagos. Just let me know that this was special, this was important, and was another way that God shows up in serendipity. So in many circles, March is a month to celebrate sisterhood. The UN created something called International Women's Day that has evolved into Women's History Month. And as they say, every month is everybody's history month, but those that have been marginalized and have not always been at the top of the food chain, often we have to do a special focus and special name. So what I want to talk about is just this women's and woman's history and the bonds that we have the potential to strengthen so that we can all, almost put our arms out and we climb up, and we all climb up on each other's shoulders and stand higher from generation to generation and get our breath of our impact getting wider and our ability to have more even impact and long-lasting input by going deeper. So some other ways that Deborah has really impressed me is establishing a foundation that in her mother's name, her mother very well known in our hometown for community service, and Deborah just established it, got it done, boom, check. So watch this space. I want to be copying and pasting because my father was also a significant leader in the hometown. He was a pastor for 70 years. And when I go places and people say, hey, that's Reverend Word's daughter, that still has a lot of specialness for me. And I believe I'd like to remember him in a way and honor and give scholarships to people in Winston-Salem as a result of that. But, you know, Deborah doesn't just talk about it. She gets it done. The other thing that I love and the positive, just, you know, you can do it kind of attitude that she has is giving back to the village. I got to see how she loved on her mother-in-law. You know, one of the major reasons she came was for her 90th birthday. And this mother-in-law had been a role model to me of an American woman. Can you imagine coming to this country on a boat 60 years ago? Not even flying, but on a boat, and raising your 6 kids with your husband, building your life in Ibadan. And even after your husband dying, staying in the country, raising more children, and really being, you know, named a chief because of also the service that you give to the community and the impact. You know, we as Americans coming into this space, we always say, bloom where you're planted. We ask for soft landings, but they aren't always soft because sometimes you don't get shaped until there's some sandpaper around. Hallelujah. When sometimes you need that roughness to help to shape you and grow you and refine you. And this lady, to me from afar, was a testament. I'll shoot back to when I was in college and I initially met. So this is another serendipitous moment for Deborah and I. We're doing a program that I had organized called Bridging the Gap Between Africans and African Americans. And it was a 3-part program. I had arranged all the speakers and everything. And, you know, at NC State, people were coming, exchanging culture. It was part speaking, part eating, part dancing, sharing of culture and stories and that type of thing. Yes, I was doing this in 1988. And the first and second programs I was able to do, but the third one conflicted with the theater competition I had to do. So, of course, Deborah volunteered to stand in my place, and I'd already gotten all the speakers and everything. So Deborah was, you know, doing MC and coordinating, which she does so well. She can, like I said, she's a leader. And I wasn't there, but I was told that when a certain one of those speakers that I had organized walked through the door, you know, they locked eyes and they've been married ever since. So they've been a couple and now married for, I think, almost 30 years. So I love the fact that my Bridging the Gap Between Africans and African Americans as a program actually bridged their gap, and she ended up marrying this young man, Mr. Taiwo, in her life. And what's beautiful about that is he had previously been a roommate to my husband. And through conversations, I learned something that, you know, little girl from Winston-Salem wasn't that aware of. And that was that his mother, this Black American, celebrating her 90 years birthday a couple weeks ago, had come to Nigeria in the 50s, had married this Nigerian Yoruba man, and had raised her family here in Nigeria. So he was telling me about something that would become my story, that would become part of who I am. And oftentimes you need to see it or hear it to believe that it's possible for you. Because I tell you, I had many people telling me, oh, it'll never work. You marry someone from a different culture. You know, he takes you back to that country. He's going to have wives in the village. You're going to live in tree number 5 and limb number 2. all the things that the brainwashing of, the colonizer had brought upon. So, many Black Americans didn't think very favorably of the motherland and associating people in the motherland. So what's the bottom line? Deborah was coming back to love on her mother-in-law, who had adopted Nigeria, and Nigeria had adopted her. This woman I had heard about 40 years ago, but have never met her, but her story was a model and a motivation to me that I could also write my own story, and I wouldn't be an outlying, exception, because she had already walked this path and already shown us what's possible when you let love lead you, and when you don't fear stepping out and doing what other people aren't doing. So I said all that to say, I finally got to meet this woman at her 90th birthday, and she's amazing. I didn't really get to tell her how I felt, but hopefully it was transmitted. She has so many loved ones around her. I didn't want to, jump in and take up that space, but I hope she can feel that she was very much a role model for me from afar at a time when I didn't have too many. So I'm just so thankful that Deborah was able to at least let me meet her after all this time. And boy, did we have a good time. We partied. I mean, the whole time we're dancing in line, doing the group, all the things that we do at Nigerian parties. Our dresses were amazing. We're all matching. People got the geles on, the music and the drummers going, and we're spraying with the money. It was beautiful, and to be able to share it with someone from my hometown where the culture is completely different and everything that we come from is so different from this whole experience. But for so long I was the one experiencing it and going back and telling people about it, but now to be here with her and we experience it together, oh my God, it was just special. It was grounding. It was completing. So Serendipity was having a program called Bridging the Gap between Africans and African Americans, and it actually bridging the gap between Deborah, the African American, and her husband, the African, in a marriage. That's Serendipity. Meeting up with Keisha after 3 years, chance meeting there, chance meeting here, Serendipity. And probably one last one that I'll share, because Deborah and I just really have a whole lot of them. Probably the last 2 years when I was in America, I ended up, Deborah invited us to a party in Durham and said, Melody is going to be there. Melody is going to be there. And the story on Melody is that she was a senior to my daughter at NC State, and Deborah knew her. And I think it was through Deborah's husband, relatives. She's originally from Lagos, but was studying at NC State, and her younger brother, Harmony, Melody and Harmony. So when my daughter was coming to NC State, Deborah asked, Melody, look out for, Patrinia's daughter, Chinyere. She's on her way. She's coming. And, she's kind of like a big sister to my daughter. So Chi went on to be like the president of her international dorm. My daughter went on to be the vice president of the African Union group there. And through that African Union group, she made an African Union and met her husband, her Nigerian husband, just like I did on the same campus. So such a beautiful, beautiful connection. Now, so excited. I haven't seen Melody in years. She was at the wedding over 10 years ago, and I had seen her, but I knew she had left Nigeria, but I didn't know where she was. So I'm talking to her, and we're gisting. She's got a baby. She's married. I'm just so excited for her. I'm like, oh my God. I said, where do you live? Where do you live? She said, we live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I said, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania? Do you know that Chinyere was born in the city right next to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania? Did you know that? And I said, years ago, we were in a Nigerian society. My husband was vice president there. Chinyere grew up in that society. And funny enough, she said, well, it's my husband that's from there. And, that's why we live there. And her husband walked up, and I was like, oh my God. His face is a copy paste of his mother, and his mother was in our Nigerian society in the 90s. Can you believe that? So now I'm meeting Melody, who helped Chi-Chi settle into NC State and their whole thing, and meeting Chiron and connecting all on that side. I then realized that her husband is part of a family that was in our Nigerian society in the 90s when Chi-Chi was a baby. So how do I explain this? Once I realized who his mom was, I then recognized that his mother, Yinka, I had, God blessed me because they had just come to the country. They were newly immigrants into Nigeria, into the U.S. Now, I think they'd been here sometime because she had finished some schooling. But I was able to get her a job at Harley-Davidson. So she worked in the training and development department and, got to get some additional work experience, and I got to know her better. And her brother, my husband, got him an engineering job at his firm. Obviously they had to qualify for the jobs, but to be in a position to help them is a theme. It's a theme. So you now had the son of the family that we were in a position to help in the 90s, married a girl who was in a position to help our daughter 10 years, 15 years later in another state and everything. And now we've come back together and meet each other once again. Is that serendipity? So to me, I just think it's wonderful that your character shows even when no one is looking, that we made the decisions to help when we could have said, I ain't got time for that. So I just want to encourage you, often the seeds that you are sowing right now, you may not see the fruit of them, even in your lifetime. But as my dad always said, he'd ride down the street and we'd be waving in the windows. And I said, Dad, I don't see nobody. He said, baby, you never know who's looking. Give from an overflowing cup and you'll never, ever thirst. So leave the scarcity mentality and know that there's abundance. And as we give, it does come back to us. Because as we gave in the 90s, it came back and blessed my daughter. And then these two people came together. Is that like what? So I wanted to take this episode because I had been sharing with so many people about, meeting Deborah at the airport and just seeing, full circle how she was with her husband's family, her family, and just bringing everyone together. Deborah is quite the connector. And then when she came to our home, I remember she kept saying, I packed my patients, waiting, getting through visas, coming to our home. Oh, and we just had a good time. We just did everything, set up talking, went for walks, enjoyed great meals, toured. I took her to see about every friend I could find. She got to see some of the most beautiful places in Lagos. We went to the Nikkei Art Gallery, which she was captivated. She loved seeing all the levels of art. So make sure when you come to Lagos that's a place that you go visit. We got to go to the American Guest Quarters Club, one of my go-tos, and meet with a wonderful friend. We went to the rooftop with Shireen and we was shopping for here and there, and then her daughter came and we took them to places and experienced getting our outfits ready because we had a big Oba king being crowned event the next Saturday, and getting all our outfits together and going in and just partying and meeting all these people and just we work so hard in this life, we work and we work and we work. I mean, I love that I'm at a stage in my life where the amplitude of my play is as happy and high as my amplitude of my work has been. So seeing Deborah just letting it loose and playing, and we're dancing and eating and drinking, and priceless. So I'll round up this episode by saying, actually, I was in a session with a client recently, and she's going through a very tough time. And I was taking her through some of her strengths and how so many of her strengths were other-centered. You know, I talked about Deborah's, some of her things are other-centered as well. But I really feel like she's given to herself in this season. So one of the messages I was giving to my client was to figure out ways that so much of the love that she gives, if she can give it in a place where it will be reciprocated. And one of the things that she noticed was that she has a whole community of women that pray and care for her, but through this season she had withdrawn from them. Whether it's shame, whether it's, don't have the energy, or all the things that we might tell ourselves. But I just want to encourage you to lean into love. Lean into those spaces where people don't just tolerate you. They collaborate with you. They love on you. They want you there. They hug you and appreciate you. So they don't just tolerate you, they appreciate you. That's the rhyme I was looking for. But what I want you to think about is, just as I'm loving on Deborah right now, who are the people who love on you, or who you could invite a little bit more so that you can get the love and get the love? That's how you live like long, wonderful lives, is by having relationships and being in communities where you're appreciated, not just tolerated, where people actually look forward and or miss you when you're not there. There's a story that's going around now where a woman had been walking the same route for 15 years. Every morning, same time, she would get up at 6:45. And she was doing it more because, she had lost her husband, and she was doing it to leave the emptiness of the house. And she had a situation where she hurt her ankle, and her doctor told her she had to, not be able to walk for a couple of weeks. And she had like strangers coming to her door. The mailman came, the crossing guard, the owner of a store, all of these people who were along her route that she had walked for 15 years completely because it was her therapy. These people came, they missed her, number one. Wanted to make sure she was okay. Did she need anything? One, they would make sure she wasn't dead, right? But then she got to learn it was kids at the school who wouldn't get out of the car until they saw her, and that gave them the confidence to leave the car. And the crossing guards, people knew they were on time because they saw you coming along. All of those things, we don't know what impact we're going to have on others. We all kind of suffer from the disease of our own POV, our own point of view. But through empathy and maybe giving without knowing the impact that we're having is the heart that I want to encourage. Because as I think about my relationship with Deborah and the things that we've given, oh yes, her being there along with Joe Kay. Joe Kay is one of my besties. My daughter was in a head-on car collision, broke, had some injuries. Deborah was there who lives in the same city, was at the hospital within an hour or so. My girlfriend Joe Kay flew up from Texas and was there the next day, all because it took me at least 48 hours to come from Nigeria. But these are women who stood in the gap for me. And I'll never, ever, ever, never, ever, 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 never, I'll never be able to repay them, but I'll never forget how they didn't forget me and my family. So some of the statistics, there's a World Happiness Report that came out last week, and it's saying that, the world, love's in need of love today, and that people are at the highest levels of loneliness. A lot of people don't even know how to have relationships anymore because they're so with things, they don't know how to be with people. Comparison, as it increases, it takes our happiness down. Separation, as it increases, it takes our happiness down. But community and sharing and caring and being with other, even like-minded people, even if it's a debate, if it's just a dance, we danced and sang and played, all of those allow you to join your spirit with others. I just want to invite you to experience some of the serendipity and sisterhood that I've experienced, and just the joy that I had in my sister coming across the water to see me. This is Coach Patrenia signing out, and Pepper Soup Stories. I just shared my story. Not much pepper, a whole lot of pepper soup, because I am grateful and I recognize what's in front of me with the power of sisterhood, the power of friendship, and just having women in my life that Deborah could easily have intimidated me, and probably at points in my life was like, dang, but I chose to use it as a bar to inspire me, not to intimidate, and to ask and engage and learn from her so that I could get as good at things as she is. In our investment club, she's had so much patience with me with one of the jobs I had to do. It just wasn't my aptitude, but I decided not to give up, and she didn't give up on me. In that movie, Akil and the Bee, when the professor has reached his limit and what he can do for K.K. Palmer's character, and he gives her the box of all the words to go home and study. When she got home, she didn't find that she didn't have a coach. What she learned was she had 50,000 coaches. They had been there all the time, but she had never engaged them. So I want to invite you today to engage those coaches, engage those friends, engage those potential sisters in your community that you may be overlooking. Show gratitude, reach out, do something small, but be willing to lean into love, and you'll be surprised what love will come back to you. What I've learned through this experience is that we don't transform alone. We transform in spaces where we are seen, supported, and challenged to grow. That's actually the work I do inside my Identity Expansion Mastermind. If you're in a season where you're redefining who you are, or you're longing for deeper alignment, clarity, and connection, I invite you to join us. Find the link in the show notes below. Check us out. Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share with a friend, leave a review, and connect with us on social media. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, soulmates, stay inspired, keep growing, and turn life's peppers into a flavorful soup. Connect below. Bye-bye for now.